has a Substack and she talks about AI and cinema. She teaches AI into filmmakers and she writes about AI in education and how to make basically. We will give her the stage so she can basically present herself to us and we will then go on with the conversation.
Yeah, it's great to be able to talk about what we write about and what we make.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I have filmmaking background. I actually started as a journalist and worked in magazines for many years. Then I got a master's in digital journalism from the Columbia University, and that's what first introduced me to audiovisual storytelling. I started doing video journalism, working with leading newspapers like the BBC, the New Yorker, Time, and others. And then I did documentary filmmaking. So I started making longer projects. My first feature documentary, I worked on it for 10 years. The second one was a little bit shorter of a timeline. And then, so I've been running my own production company since 2011. I currently have two production companies, one in the US and one in Switzerland. I'm based in Switzerland. And I started playing with AI and in a very full immersion way because I did a master's in AI for business during my maternity leave about 2.5 years ago. I finally had time away from clients and sets and travel commitments. And I loved it right away. It blew my mind. I often use that term. Other people often use that term. I think it's the term that most describes the experience of discovering the power of AI. So then I started focusing more on the audiovisual storytelling aspect of it, which is my passion and what drives my life. Like, it's not a job. It's just I live it, breathe it. I think about it all the time. And now it's fully interconnected with AI. So I'm obsessed about both of these things and how they function together. And truly, at the end of the day, I'm an entrepreneur because I want to be able to make a lot of different types of projects. I have a lot of passions and interests, and I like being able to work on one project for a day or for a month, and it gives me the flexibility to have a sandbox. And I started really maybe thinking about AI for film is complex because there is the AI generated films, which are mostly short form at the moment because the technology makes it so that it's difficult to work on a longer project like a feature length film. Although consistency has largely been addressed, but there are other complications, like every couple of months or even every couple of weeks, there's new tools and the quality is very different. So it makes it hard to make longer form films. But there are those that are completely AI generated. And then there's also how you can integrate AI into the film. So it can be like a dream sequence, or it can be fixing up some dust on a lens, or adding or subtracting something from a shot that was taken as like a live action footage. And then there's also the AI tools that can help you create the film, like everything that goes before, behind, and after. So the organization of the research and the analysis of what story you're going to tell, organizing the set, the scheduling, the pricing for budgets for clients, and then all the distribution and post-production. And I mean, there's a long list of how these AI tools can really enhance our jobs, in the sense that we can choose to create some workflows that allow us to be saving time on the things that are more bureaucratic or annoying. Like the amount of times that I had to rewrite the same synopsis and logline for all the different grants that I was applying for when I was doing feature-length documentaries is mind-boggling. Whereas I could have spent that time on the actual, interviewing more people, or thinking through the storyline, or selecting the quotes that most mattered for the final film. So when I talk about AI cinema, that's what I mean. It's all of that.
So it's not like a specific tool, it's like that we would say a whole workflow on utilizing different AI tools to help you. And it's a cinema because you actually can make a full film by utilizing these tools. So just as a question for someone who's not so aware with filmmaking, can you tell us briefly what is a dream sequence?
A dream sequence is a moment that is not tangible and not, but could suggest that the character is having a flashback or is imagining something that
Okay.
isn't actually supposed to feel real.
Okay, great. So I'm glad we established that. AI tools have become really good and consistency actually improves. Like you can now shoot some different videos and shots from like a start and an end frame, which was not applicable in the previous months. I just want to like go through with you, how do you work? Let's say like if you took a project, if you and you dismantle everything, how would you approach it? From where would you start? And I really also like want to see the depth in your creative process because yeah, like we do have AI as a tool, but like all of these projects are still you. It's your passion because it's your ideas that they are embodied into these projects.
Yeah, absolutely. The first step is having a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
But you can have 20 great ideas. And when you start developing them, they're not so great. Or maybe they're not so great for that specific moment for you as an artist or for the audience. Like maybe people, you feel like they're just not going to understand that kind of story at that. So there's a lot of different considerations that go inside of what is a good idea. I usually try to have that moment as a pen on paper moment. So very old school, going back to the basics. And that's also what I teach. I like to get, especially when I teach teenagers AI for film, I like to have them go to the paper and not have any sort of influence that goes beyond just what is inside of you. But my ideas come from a lot of different things. One film that I made recently called Mama Robot, I started that idea because of some news that I found on social media, which was about a robot that could hold a fetus for the 9 months of the gestation period. And I got really obsessed with it. And then for like a few days, and then it was revealed that it was fake news. And that made it more interesting to me because of how we relate to media and the power of media and how we're consuming content and what's behind all that. So that got me obsessed. And usually what makes a great idea is one that you're obsessed with, because it takes a while to make a film. And so you want to do only stories that you're really obsessed with, unless there's like a specific, for example, you're trying to add something to your portfolio. And so you feel like you need to do a specific thing. But usually for the more meaningful work, you're doing something that you're obsessed with and that you're trying to figure out through the making of that project. And so once I have the pen and paper or the idea, and sometimes that can also be an image, then I start playing around. And usually Mid-Journey is the best place, the best home for exploring styles and concepts and developing the first steps of developing an idea. And once you've established the style and sort of in same time, I also use Notebook LM. I love using Notebook LM to explore all the different dimensions of the story. And most of my more meaningful work is multi-layered. And so I like to develop all the layers and try to see how they fit together. So I put in whatever, relevant content I can in there. Sometimes it's my own creations, like a lot of different ideas, and I pop them in there, and then I explore like through the mind map or podcast what the fil rouge is. And then I sort of at the same time of all of this, I'm also creating a custom GPT. But this was true until a few weeks ago. Now I'm obsessed with Claude. So ChatGPT has gotten kind of the backseat for thing, but I usually would create, but it can be also a Gemini gem, right? Just like an LLM that is trained on your specific project. You can be as detailed or not in it. It could just be like, oh, I'm doing a sci-fi film about a robot, or it could be like, here's, context on all of my previous work. Here's the message that I'm trying to convey. Here's the, the styles I'm playing with, and here's the script, and here's the shot list. And you can continuously train it as you move forward in the creative process. So once you sort of have the concept very tight, then you need to have a script, you need to have a shot list, and you need to have prompts that correspond to the shot list. And now I'm talking about a fully AI generated film, not a mix. The hybrids are maybe a different workflow, but and once you have that, then it depends, because you could do the entire film on a node-based platform like Weavy or Flora. And it's really interesting how like the sort of trigger or first nodes can be actually then replicable. So you could put like the character and then the outfit and then the props, the shoes, the location, the vibe, the camera type, the lens type, the lighting. So you can then recycle that workflow and create just change those specific element of the output, and then you create a prompt concatenator which unites them, refines it, and then you start generating the different images. So that's one way to do it, but you can also go and generate one image at a time and then generate the video one at a time. With like right now I'm testing Sea Dream, and it's really crazy Sea Dance, sorry, because you basically can put in an image, and with the omni reference, like understands that whole world. And so you can really create much, like very quickly. In VO3 of Google, there's the whole section, there's a whole flow, they call it, where you can just extend what you were from the previous shot. I love Kling as well, where you can just do start frame, end frame. And, if you want to have one continuous shot of a film, which we call in the cinema world, a oneer, seems like there's no edit or cut between the shots. Then Kling I found to be amazing for that. And I still like, even though, the node-based canvases have become very popular for these repeatability and scalability reasons. And you see them now also in platforms like Runway and FreePic. I still like to go into the singular platforms and play. So the creative process, the step-by-step playbook is sort of different also for each project. So I worked on, I was the lead AI artist for a feature-length documentary called Autumn Gold, which is coming out soon. And for that, they had historical images that they wanted to be our reference images, but in sketch style. And it was like, I used mostly Nano Banana, obviously, for that. And they wanted it to be very close to the authenticity and precision of the archival images. So that was like, according to the project, you kind of choose the tool stack that makes most sense. Usually once I have some still images, I start putting down on an editing timeline. I use Adobe Premiere, but I know I should probably start using DaVinci Resolve. And sometimes I've used CapCut as well, but for more advanced filmmaking, I use those. And I start putting down the images. I start looking for music. So if I am generating music with AI, I usually go to Suno. I have some idea of what I want for the vibe. So I use an LLM of choice to develop the terminology to describe the kind of mood I have in my mind and the soundscape that I'm imagining. And then I start generating. So I start having some music and maybe some sound effects and some images, some still images. I start putting it on a timeline and I start feeling it come to life. And there's like the breath of it starts coming through. And then I go and start, I continue with the generation of the image videos. And then it starts coming all together in the edit.
Yeah, that's really cool. I would like to ask you, because you said that you are being really obsessed with cloud lately. Have you tried Skills yet?
Yeah, of course. I have
Okay,
all sorts of amazing skills in there now. Every day
yeah.
I'm like, can you add this other skill and this other one? I think I'm adding like, I don't know, 3 new skills every day. It's a very talented LLM.
Yeah, exactly. Because this is one thing that I really use a lot more often now because of this, how easy it is to like create a skill and then just reuse it and reuse it. Wanted to ask, you said before that like you were choosing a tool based on the project and the requirements of the project and what you were imagining. But you also mentioned that you like to go into the singular platforms and play with it. So do you think that in your critical ability is better to play in its singular tool in order for you to get like an idea on how you can use them on future projects and ideas that you have, or it's more like, okay, I want to basically get the raw model from the provider of it and then just not go into every platform if they have like, if they are offering like an API or whatever?
Starting out, then you should probably just have a subscription to an aggregator free pick. It's sort of all contained in the same platform and you have access to a lot of different ones. It's my job and also my passion to what all those are doing. And so I like if I could not use VO directly in VO, I would feel upset. And I think that I don't have proof of this. I'm sure if somebody were to use Perplexity to research this topic, they would find some interesting answers. But I just, from my experience, I have the feeling that if you go to the Kling website and you create a start frame end frame, you have an output that is better than if you do Kling start frame end frame in an aggregator platform. I just get that sense that they're probably not giving the latest version to the aggregators because otherwise nobody would go back to their platform. But I don't have proof of that. It's just a feeling, and from some experiments that I did, that was just what it felt like. I also think that there's the user interface is a big part of my job. I feel really comfortable in Kling and Runway. Like in those platforms, I just like, oh, like it's so intuitive to my brain. And instead, there are some other platforms that feel a little clunkier, and a lot of it is, of course, how much you're actually using the platform. And after 3 or 2 intensive days of experimenting with it and reading about it and seeing how other people use it and being fully immersed, then you obviously become familiar with it. Like if I go to the free pick platform, I'm familiar with it. I know how to do stuff and navigate, but it doesn't have that. It doesn't feel like my space. My kind of space for how I work. It depends, At Weavy, for example, I was one of the first people to know about it or, to be in that sort of cohort of first users. And it felt really overwhelming to me. And I ended up not using it. And I started using it again, like probably 2 or 3 months ago when I saw another filmmaker. He's also an educator, Rory Flynn. He's like a Midjourney expert. And I saw a workshop with him where he showed how it worked. And I was like, Oh, now I get it. And so it's really important to share workflows and methods with the community, which is one of the benefits also of being a in the creative partner programs and also some other communities of AI filmmakers, like Machine Cinema is an amazing one. Curious Refuge always has amazing YouTube tutorials and updates on different tools. So I think that, it's a constant learning experience, and depending on where I'm at also as an artist, like what kind of story I'm trying to tell, I'm interested in certain tools more than others.
Yeah, I totally get that. Also, I was researching for a project about the rights that you have to the music after you create them with Suno on the platform, or if you get basically Suno's API, which is only available through one specific provider. So basically, it's a bit of a gray area, like who has the rights if you actually create the music outside of Suno. And I wanted to also maybe ask you how important it is for you as an artist, since you made this music with your prompt, your idea, to have the right to that music to embed it into your films.
I know it's controversial, but I don't have this need to claim the right to what I'm making. I think there's a more of like an open source mentality of sharing, and maybe if there was a lot of money tied to it, then the decision would be a little bit different. But it's like, I don't know, for me, it's about just the creation is what's important. And then there's like the paid work, which is like commissioned, and you're doing it for a client or something, and then that's a whole different set of legal issues and responsibilities. And I think that in general, for all of these arts, we need to establish some rules, both on like just ethics and also legal. On the legal front, there's no doubt that we have to do that. But as an artist, when I'm doing independent work, I'm not, like, if somebody else wants to use the music that I used in my film and wants to copy it, like, okay, I'm not possessive about what I'm creating. I think I'm creating because I have the urge to create and I want to share. And if in that sharing process somebody else is inspired and wants to claim that and use it and recycle it, then that's okay. I think there's a lot, if you go back to the history of cinema and of art, like, we have always used references, and it's the same kind of point of view. It's like that we remix and then make it ours. And if the music that I created for Alma Robot is used in a different film that is a poetic film based on somebody's poem, then that same song, the fact that I was the one that created it, yeah, I created it, but I created it with a machine. I think that will change in general. That we will want to have the rights to everything that we create on these platforms, especially like AI influencers or AI actors. Like, there's a lot of monetization opportunity, and once there's the money, then the dynamics shift significantly. But at this stage, at least, and then maybe we can do a follow-up podcast in a year and I might have a different point of view. But right now, the music that I just created, the soundtrack, or a few songs of the soundtrack for Alma Robot on Suno, and I loved them. And I was like, oh my God, these can be music videos. And it feels like an album, because there were a lot of different versions that felt like they were telling the same story in different ways. And I got really excited. It was the first time that I felt like I had created a whole universe, like a disc, right? Like the old disc.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I put it on SoundCloud, and but just even in doing that and in realizing that can be done, and how it made me feel, that I felt like I had another product. Like, it wasn't just a film, but it was a whole different universe tied to it, and that was really exciting to me. And then that was enough for me. I don't need to have the rights to that.
Yeah, sure. When you're making music with a platform like Suno, for example, most of the artists want to have the rights so they can use it on their own projects. I don't mean that like not creating it, but use it in their own projects. Because if Suno has the rights, maybe someday they come up to you and they say, yeah, like you used our music in your project, so now we decided that like either we will take it down or get paid more or whatever. I'm just giving an example here of what I have seen as a discussion. This is where rights would be playing a role on like who created the music and then who can use it on their projects. But I also like really your mentality on, okay, I created something with the machine and I have it out there, people can use it. I just like want it to be used. I don't want to like get like money or royalties out of it necessarily. If you have an opinion on that, happy to share it with us.
Yeah, it's that I think it boils down to what is our relationship as a creator with the company that owns the or created the tool. And I think there will be a lot of evolutions and changes in the coming months/years. The ownership in that sense makes sense. I don't see what the solution is right now, but it goes back to the need for there to be more clear parameters and regulations in how we're creating right now. It's the Wild West. We're in the dinosaur era of what this will be. So
True.
right now it's the tech is moving so fast, faster than what us humans can understand and digest, and our societies can definitely not keep up with what's happening. And where it's the technology teaching itself, and it's very crazy, right, what's happening right now. So it's hard to be like, oh well, the platforms should be doing this. Like maybe Suno isn't going to even survive, maybe there's going to be another platform next month. So I think we should all be speaking up about what we really think is important to save and to establish. And each person, we have this responsibility, which is a communal wave of what we each care about. And in that, then we come together and we can talk and find what those solutions are. The first thing is to understand like what would be the right agreement. If you're paying for the membership on Suno, should there be a contract that you sign with Suno? But like, if somebody is creating one song every 3 months versus somebody whose job is every day all day long creating completely with Suno, what kind of agreement is fair that can be scalable to all the users? I'm not sure what the answer to that is, but it's a great question, and I would be curious if there is somebody who has strong opinions on it or potential solutions. I can interview them for my AI Cinema Substack, and we can go dive deeper on that. I still also use real composers and music from Epidemic Sound, where I have a subscription service. And it doesn't always work still, but and I think the people who are trained in music and can articulate and have that training to be able to articulate in a deeper way, they can really create incredible stuff. But it's sort of like if you give the AI video generators tools to a filmmaker or a director of photography who understands all the lenses and the lighting and what each means for the story, and you have them put a prompt and image references to create an output, it's going to be definitely a totally different quality than somebody who has never made a film in their life. So I'd be curious to hear from the music world about Suno, what could be the solution there.
Yeah, and I totally get that. Like, we cannot expect the same output from someone who understands the lighting, how it should be. He has a whole vision on their minds, knows how the lens should be, what should be reflecting, to have the same output with someone that writes one sentence in a prompt. Like, the other person has put a lot of thought and a lot of articulation into the prompt itself. Like, the other prompt is like pretty generic, so it makes no sense that the output will be similar, as we can see. I remember from what you said earlier, I'm changing a bit the conversation, but because the question popped in my head a little bit late, and I would like to ask you, how important is the UI for you as a creator? And I'm mentioning that because from my background, I'm mostly like a developer engineer, like hardcore engineering. So I don't mind like having the CLI popping up like on my terminal. I'm this kind of like nerd most of the times. But like from your side, that you're more like of a creative person, how do you have these experiences with the tools, and how does this affect the way you use the tools?
So at the moment, I am building a product with Cursor through Claude, with Claude, and with well, it was supposed to be Lovable, then it's Versal, and with automations, and it's very techy. I really am jealous of your knowledge because navigating I'm exactly the prototype of a vibe coder. Like I'm totally vibing. Like screenshot, like I'm a non-tech person, tell me step by step in a very simple way what exactly I have to do. I feel very simple and silly in creating this, but in less than a week, I've been able to already build a lot. And then it'll
Hmm.
take a lot of refinement, and it'll be a longer process of making sure everything works and testing. But it is wild how, even though the whole interface, the user experience has been a little bit of a trauma, like
Oh,
it's
wow.
not, yeah, I mean, Cursor, like you see all this like code going, and you're like, then there's the terminal, and there's all these like, I mean, for me it's like learning Chinese, which I tried to learn Mandarin at a certain point. I did it for like 6 months, and then I could only count five. I'm like, okay, I think I'm gonna not do something else as a hobby. But yeah, it's I feel like I've learned a lot of psychology and function in just thinking through these elements of what you need on a website, or how the code works. And I feel like my brain is expanding continuously to levels that I never expected it to go to. And it's the user experience, because it makes you think of like how the other person is going to use it, how you are using it, but it's so many other layers of what we're deciding to build, what we're deciding to make, even in films. Now that things are possible, what matters to you? So I think that we're all, hopefully there's actually a lot of humanity in what's happening, and that we can reflect on what are the deepest part of us, what that needs, and to express and share and do.
Yeah, no worries. It's very interesting because I just want to see how people are using these tools. We see some sort of shift between like having an app just on the web right now and chatting, and then having it also on our desktop and being able to open it from somewhere. So it's just this shift that's going on, and basically there will be something in the middle, I think. Like we won't be one or another, but like we see this sort of change on how we interact with applications and how we interact with LLMs, for example, with AI. Beginning, you mentioned that you are teaching teenagers as well. So how has this come up? Like, do you teach in a filmmaking school? Like, do you teach into your Substack only, or your Substack is like more for curated people? Like, I just want to maybe give us a little bit of an overview on what is teaching, like your teaching levels or different styles of teaching that you have. And yeah, basically, how do you approach on that? Because I think like maybe teenagers are a little bit more experts with the tools because they have seen them before, but like maybe a little bit of older people, like they are not so familiar with them.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I teach teenagers at the Locarno Film Festival, which is one of the important film festivals, and it's here in Switzerland. So it's every August, and I've
Mm-hmm.
taught there twice by now. And the teenagers, it's like a 3-day course, and it's teenagers actually they haven't necessarily used these tools that much
Ah,
because they're under 13, so
ah.
or they're around 13, and so
Mm-hmm.
there have been some regulation, and then their parents
Mm-hmm.
don't always want them to use it, so there's different reasons why they're not that familiar with them. Teenagers are the toughest audience. They're going through this very delicate transformative time in their life where they're trying to figure out who they are, and they sort of hate their parents. They like me, the boy might like the girl next to him, but he's shy, and they
Mm-hmm.
like their armpits stink, they have body odor, and they have acne on their face, and they're just insecure basically, and not they don't know themselves yet. This is like a very generic statement, but I feel like it's safe to say the majority of these teenagers are like that. And so the first sort of hour or two, they're all like quiet, nobody wants to raise their hands, and then they start playing with the tools and everything changes. There's a huge like seismic shift, and they don't want to go for lunch, they don't want to leave at the end of the day. They're so excited and empowered by what they see coming from their imagination. And
Mm-hmm.
that it doesn't matter how crazy their imagination is. I'm not going to be there and say, oh, but you this story. But no, like, let's do a story that is feasible in the short amount of time we have together. Yes. Because they always want to do like these epic,
Yeah.
sagas, like Game of Thrones. But, just as I wheel them in to make something that's doable, it's really awesome. And last year was amazing because they started with the pen and paper, and there I realized that there were some that were very talented artists. And
Mm-hmm.
so we trained the model with their style and then generated new imagery based on their style,
Mm-hmm.
and then animated it, and it was beautiful, and they were really excited about it. So that's usually the teenagers like that I teach, that I'm going to teach again probably in August at Locarno. And then in December, I was in a film lab in Patagonia under the mentorship of Paolo Sorrentino, the director of La Grande Bellezza, The Great Beauty, the Oscar winner, and his film Grazie is in cinemas now. So while I was there, one of the locations where we could shoot was a school. So I spoke to the headmaster and I explained to him what I do, that I teach AI and I'm an AI filmmaker, and that I really wanted to include his best students, artists, the most creative
Mm-hmm.
ones in the school, as actors in my film, and then also teach them AI for film. And so I ended up doing that. He introduced me to 4 incredibly talented students, and they were like a little older, so like 16. And so they drew, and I told them what the film was about, and my protagonist was the teacher of these students in my film.
Mm-hmm.
Then while we were like setting up the camera, and then after and before the shoot, I would show them how these tools worked and had them draw the story that they came up with, and then I animated their drawings. So that's been like a couple of the experiences with the younger people. And then I give these AI made simple workshops that are one-offs, and they're usually like once a month. I've been doing them in Florence, and then I do some online. And then I also teach at the university. So in June, I'm teaching at the university here in Switzerland, Franklin
Mm-hmm.
University. And that's like a month-long AI for film. So those are going to be like, college level students. Next month, I'm going to the Cyprus Film Festival in Cyprus to teach AI for film directors. In November, AI for film directors in Bern in Switzerland. So there's different, every is different. Have taught also architects, entrepreneurs. It's different cohorts, and it's also, every time I have to build the course, update it constantly because of the new tools, and I always have to decide which tools I'm gonna teach. But I love it. It's one of my favorite parts of my job.
Yeah, and I think you can totally see that also from how you sign to the camera when you're speaking about that. So this is your true passion and it shows definitely. Actually, I was not expecting that the younger generation wouldn't be so familiar with the tools because if you think about it, they are growing with the tools. But yeah, like due to restrictions in age and maybe like parents' restrictions for, yeah, like I think for some general issues, like parents are really worried on what their kids are exposed in the internet as well. So it makes kind of sense. Did anyone that was like outside of these, let's say, entities approached you to teach them as well?
What do you mean? Sorry.
I mean, for example, like that was not a college student, some school, like they were not students or affiliated with something, but they were like, maybe it was someone that saw your work and they were like, can you please teach me? Like, I have been a really creative person and I'm like 60 years old now, I have time. Like, can you teach me? I'm just giving an example. I don't know.
I've also offered private courses and private workshops. There's one person that I'm doing right now private workshops for, and it's like a 10 workshops course. And I've done also shorter ones like half day and a day, or broken up over like 3-4 sessions. But it's useful because that person gets customized information to their needs. But there's something to be said about learning in a group that is also a learning experience, because you see how other people are using the tools and you see different case studies. So like last June, I taught for a university here in Switzerland. It was an online course with professional film directors from all over the world. And for like an hour or two, we would do workshopping. So like they would show me what they were doing and I would critique them or give them technical advice, explain how the technology works. And even though those were particular case studies that maybe the other participants weren't, it wasn't relevant to their films or to their work, they all said like, you learn so much from seeing other people troubleshoot things. And it's very important to be able to witness other people creating and working with these tools, because we're all inventing also how we use them. I mean, there's some sort of standard ways of doing things, but then there's always those tips and tricks that go a little bit beyond what you have been doing. And it varies according to what problem you're trying to solve. So the teaching has varied greatly, and sometimes like, oh, I wish I had like a full-time professor job, like just so I knew like it was always the same thing. But I really love also the diversity of the cohorts and teaching people from different ages, different backgrounds. Like I learn a lot from how they also seeing the technology.
Yeah, I totally get that. Really appreciate your time. I know that we went a bit overboard today, like I think 10 minutes over. So, yeah, thank you very much. It was an honor, and I hope we can have you sometime next year or even mid-year when these tools will improve a lot more because technology is changing so fast. And then you can give us like more updates and also like and reach out
Okay,
to you.
awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
This was amazing. I love chatting with you, and I guess I'll see you on Substack.
Sure, it was great. Love chatting with you too. And have a great evening. Thank you
You
again.
too. Enjoy.
Thank you.